we can all agree that podcasting has been one of the most lucrative business opportunities for any established comedian because not only can they make insane amount of ad revenue through their long form content on YouTube, but they can also land very nice sponsorship deals, and more importantly, they can make insane amount of income through exclusive content behind paywalls like Patreon. And at the top of the list, like you'd expect, is Tim Dillon. However, there is a new person that just got added to the list, and that is his ex-producer, Ben Avery, with his new podcast, Lemon Party. So in this video, we'll take a look at what's been going on with Tim Dillon's Patreon, and we'll also take a look at Ben Avery's new podcast, which he has been using that momentum from him leaving the podcast to now launch a brand new podcast that is actually doing very well. So with that being said, let's get started.
Like in real life, and he's just like, it turns out Instagram makes you feel sad sometimes.
Yeah, it's a guy that just like wants to be Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah,
he's just like he's just pontificating.
Yeah. It's the guy. It's the ripped guy who dresses up like a Dalmatian and goes around the park.
Yeah, it's a guy you wouldn't even create in a video game.
Yeah,
you'd be like, this is way too retarded.
But
even
you
for
go
Skyrim.
you go into your office and people are like, I saw that documentary. I think when I found my phone was good for
They're
me.
just eating the peanut M&Ms off your desk.
Yeah, they're swallowing whole water bottles out of the fridge, and they go
like peppermints.
The rapper. When I thought the man was good, but turns out that it's not so good sometimes. And that's why I regret trying to kill Nancy Pelosi.
You would go Dunkin' Donuts?
Dude, I'm gonna go talk to Donna. She's got just big tits.
Prior to Ben leaving the podcast, the Tim Dillon Show had about 45,000 Patreon subscribers and was making about $228,000 a month, which is a lot. However, he was, I believe, the second largest creator on the platform. He has now dropped 2 spots and is the 4th largest creator. And although there is a pattern of ups and downs throughout his Patreon career, the last drop was way worse and lower than any other time in the past. And it was clearly because of the way that Tim reacted or handled the drama or the situation when his producer left the podcast. If you don't remember when Ben Avery left the Tim Dillon podcast, the next episode, Tim was making some weird comments and remarks, essentially framing the situation as if Ben was tired of being his punching bag and not being able to handle the jokes, and that he used the excuse that he wanted to follow his own art and do his own thing as a way to get out of the podcast. However, the beautiful thing about this is that Ben Avery was correct. He did leave because he wanted to pursue something by himself, and he is clearly killing it, which is the best way to prove Tim Dillon wrong, because Ben Avery did not clap back on Twitter. He didn't do anything like that. Instead, he just did his business and is showing off with the numbers. Because, like I said, Ben Avery, his ex-producer, he launched his brand new podcast called Lemon Party. It's now live on YouTube and Patreon, and check this out. They are completely killing it. In only a month, they have already 8,000 subscribers on YouTube with over 100,000 total views. They have 8,000 followers on Instagram and an insane almost 2,000 subscribers on Patreon, which translates to almost $10,000 a month at the lowest tier price membership. Here at the bottom, you can see that they have a clear and aggressive goal of making $100,000 a month, which is definitely possible, but it makes me question, did Ben leave the podcast because of a potential money problem?
It is funny where they were like, yeah, there was a lot of racist movie, and then you just spew them. It was like, oh, what? Like,
I'm like, do they like... You like tied
Is there
to
a
a
scene
tree?
where they say the N-word or throw rocks through her house?
Yeah, it's like Mississippi Burning. I get it.
That was a thing though in movies where like the white guy drops the N-word soft A, and everyone's like, and she's like, oh, you can't say that, and he's like, oh, why? Like doesn't that happen in movies like that? Soft A N-word back in like late 90s.
That a white guy says it and it's like fine.
I'm trying to think of something, but like I specifically remember some sort of scene where that happens.
I think this is just a memory of you in real life that you're conjuring up. I don't know.
That might have been a thing. It was definitely more like, yeah, I don't know. No. Like in Coach Carter, you want Channing Tatum to say it.
Yeah.
You want there to be, but then in Coach Carter there'd be like a teaching moment.
Yeah, we go, Mr. Cruz.
Yeah.
We do not use that word.
Mr. Tatum.
Mr. Tatum.
He goes, no wiggers here.
You run 200 suicides for wiggadom right now.
pretty sure they say to remember the Titans.
Unlike the majority of most podcasts out there, you can argue that the Tim Dillon show from the start heavily relied on the dynamic between Tim Dillon and his producer, which why it was a huge deal when he left. And here's where things get tricky. If you're Tim Dillon and all of a sudden your career completely explodes and you're making tons of money, how much do you pay somebody like Ben? Because Joe Rogan was in a similar situation, but he obviously took care of Jamie very, very well, to the point that Jamie was willing to travel to Texas and just move his entire life out there. And on the other hand, if you're a band and you see Tim Dillon making almost $300,000 a month, how much do you think you should get paid from that? Because especially if you were there since the beginning, you produced the podcast, and potentially you had a large influence in the growth of it. And if you look at how proactive and aggressive Ben has been with all of, the social media accounts and setting everything up, there is a possibility that this was on the works since way back, and now decided to pull the trigger, because he is clearly riding off the wave of him departing, and probably took most of the people that are now subscribed to his Patreon from Tim Dillon, which is hilarious. But obviously this is all speculation, but it would make sense to me that Ben actually left because he saw the potential of how much money he could make, because he felt talented and probably, knew that those two other people that he's doing the podcast with could pull it off. And well, he wasn't wrong, because I don't think that this is a situation where Tim Dillon was going too hard on Ben. Ben got his feelings hurt, left the podcast, and then out of nowhere just happened to start a now successful podcast. It makes more sense in my mind that he was actually working on this. It was in his plans, and then just decided to execute it now.
And it made off from the Capitol.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was great.
Yeah, there were dudes in there that were just smelling AOC's panties in her locker.
Yeah, there was a guy eating her bras, choking to death,
sending each other stimulus checks. What a great day.
That was fantastic.
Suck my dick. You have some problem with that?
Yeah.
They let him in.
They did.
They did. What's how? There's literally footage of the people of the security guards going right this way. What am I supposed to think? It seemed a little interesting to me.
Yeah, there's literally two cops and a barricade.
Yeah,
and then meanwhile, Baked Alaska is just pushing his way through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. It was just a funny day, and I think we've gone too crazy with it. Hey.
People really, when he was president, it was opposite day. Or whatever he's like, I actually,
no matter what.
Yeah.
Folks, actually, I hate wearing big diapers and going poo poo and pee pee in them. And everyone on Twitter's like, I actually love pissing and in my diaper. You retard.
It's extremely ableist to not be able to piss in a diaper.
He was like, we're not going to go to war.
You almost touched my
That's
I'm sorry. That was great. You grazed my dick. Jesus Christ.
It's considered ableist.
I might be wrong, but I think this is the first time that a producer leaves a massively successful podcast, starts their own, and begins their career with a banger of a month, because right away they're making about $10,000 on Patreon a month. Like I mentioned, they have a very aggressive monthly goal of $100,000, which is doable. And at the rate that they're growing, even if they just grow at the same rate and they don't have some insane explosion, they will be half the size of the Tim Dillon show in a matter of a year and a half, if not less. And I think that is very possible, because although it is very hard to try out new podcasts because of how long they are and how limited time we have, I believe they have potential, because Ben is obviously Ben. The other two people were actually very funny and had a pretty cool dynamic, in my opinion. So I think it's just a matter of putting more money into the production, and I think they should have a banger podcast. But what do you think? Are they going to pull this off and use the momentum they have already to build a massively successful podcast, become rich, and show Tim Dillon that he was wrong? Or will they eventually lose momentum and nobody will remember them? It'll be interesting to see what happens, because obviously I don't believe Tim Dillon is going anywhere. He is doing very well, and I believe he will continue to do so. But Ben Avery, it will be interesting. We'll check on him in a few months, see how they're doing, and see where they're at compared to Tim Dillon at that point. I know it's an unfair comparison, but I mean, it's their direct competition, in my opinion. Once again, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps out a ton, and we are trying to get to 20,000 subscribers. Dislike if you didn't like the video, but that is all we have for today. See ya.